Hello, I am the Collector, and today we are going to go through a sort of part vlog, part look at things that I own and talk about what they mean to me sort of session. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get straight on ahead. I've tried the introduction for this about 4 times now, and I can't quite decide how it's going to work. So let's just run with it and see how we go. Okay, let's tackle the Naruto figures first. And we will change the focus slightly. Oh gosh. Itachi is falling off his pedestal there. Start with Sasuke. So here we're just going to focus on Sasuke and talk about him for a bit. So I guess this shows my obvious like of Naruto. If you were looking earlier when the camera was in focus for the background there, you would have noticed the fact that you've got not just Naruto Unleashed, but both 2 of the Naruto Shippuden series as well. So yeah, I have been into anime for quite a long while. Naruto was one of my later animes that I got involved in watching. The sort of... Actually, let's bring him back. The sort of relevance of Sasuke here is more of a case of I, like quite a few people watching the anime, really did like the character. He wasn't my favourite. I guess Naruto was my favourite, to be nice and cliched. But yeah, I really did enjoy him. And you may notice on the shelf he's quite often turned to the side. That's because I never really felt he got on massively well with his brother Itachi. Being the younger brother, I kind of relate to that a bit. Me and my brother, I am the younger one there, so I guess I could associate myself in that way. It's not entirely true though, as I am a middle child, so yeah, there's a thing. Okay. So yeah, Naruto, something I like. We will talk a little bit more about that when we get round to the Naruto boxes. I will talk a bit more on that. Okay, next thing along the shelf is, if it's gonna focus, I'm not... There we go, yeah, it focused. Is a very old copy of Tolkien's The Hobbit. The Hobbit, I actually read after The Lord of the Rings. However, I had it read to me by my dad when I was a very young child. I had The Hobbit read to me. But after reading The Lord of the Rings, I sort of went back to this for reference material and found out they are rather dissimilar books. The Hobbit being much more based on traditional sort of fantasy for the time, and Lord of the Rings going a sort of very different route, a much more adult route, whereas Tolkien's The Hobbit seemed to be a lot more sort of dragon's treasure. Nothing wrong with that. They are both very good books in their own right. They are also both very different books. And yeah, The Hobbit, great book. Not the first book or anything like that. The reason it's probably sat on my shelf for such a long time is because I did enjoy reading it. But I also purposely put it away from Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings, because I feel they are not so associated. You'll probably find the Silmarillion hanging around my room somewhere. And we get onto that shelf when we get to it. Next book here we have is A Bluffer's Guide to Opera. Well, that tells you a little about me. At a certain point in my life, my dream was to become an opera singer. It didn't quite work out as the plan, but I have always enjoyed singing, and this definitely taught me a few interesting things over the years. I enjoy going to operas very, very, very occasionally. Okay, our next box, and we will do it as a box. These are the fighting fantasy novels by Stephen Jackson and Ian Livingstone. These specific ones are by Stephen Jackson and Ian Livingstone. I also have read ones that weren't. But as you can tell, The one that I've read the most, Warlock of Firetop Mountain. Really enjoyed this, played it several times over. If you are not familiar with fighting fantasy novels, pretty sure quite a few of you will be. But the idea of a fighting fantasy novel, and you can now get them on your Kindle, or any other sort of Android device, or I'm pretty sure they'd be on iOS as well. And they play through like a game. You get sent to different page numbers, depending on your decisions. In this particular example, we are reading the block of writing related to this bit, and it's saying, slash through a painting with your sword, turn to 388. Hold a jewel up in front of it, turn to 31. Plunge a wooden stake into it, turn to 241. And throw cheese at it, turn to page 45. So let's go to 45. Well, you didn't think I was going to go for one of the sensible options, did you? Cheese hits the portrait and bounces off. You hear an evil laugh coming from the walls and realise the warlock is mocking you. You decide to leave this room by the north door. Turn to page 90. Well, we won't go along with that for too long, but these books really, I played a lot of them in my sort of secondary school education. I was playing these, which used to really annoy the teachers because I'd bring in these as my reading book and they'd say, well, we can't work out how much you're reading. I was like, what? What does that matter? I am reading. You see I'm reading, and they go, but you turn from page 45 to 300 and whatever, and then you turn page back to page 100. How can we work out how much you're reading? In the end, I brought in another book that I read on the side for a little while. You can see the ones that haven't been played so much. I mean, I guess that was my main one. I think I read it about 4 times. But I've played most of these. Some of them never went to school, so they've been kept in much more pristine condition. Some of them went to school quite a few times. I think there was a point where I gave up taking them to school and just decided, okay, you know what, I will live with the teacher's decisions. As you can tell, I do read quite a bit. There is a lot of bookshelves in my room, but to be honest, there's more DVDs on them than books. Let's wait till we get to the second half of the shelf of that. Okay, our next one along is playing cards. Now, for those of you who've watched anything on my channel so far, you know I unbox a lot of cards. And in my younger life, much younger life, I did a lot of playing with playing cards. Trying to do magic tricks, trying to shuffle things expertly. Trying's probably the best word. I mean, shuffling, I can manage some of the shuffles that are in this book. They're under the skills page. Let's flip back in memory. Oh gosh. Yeah, I never got to the sort of high realms of it. I do play some of the games occasionally. It's helpful. It does have some card games in, but you always find that the rules are slightly different from how you remember them when you played them with a mate. Because the thing is, card games, the more you play them, the more you know about this, they just seem to be one of those things that everyone has a slightly different take on. Anyway, talking about first books I read, well, it would be a lie to say Lord of the Rings was the first book I read. I mean, it would be a complete lie. I'm sure it was like Somebody Goes to School by such and such and such and such. However, when I was not very old, I went and saw the first Lord of the Rings film, which is covered in this 6-part set. Oh, well, 7-part if we count the appendix. But covered in this 6-part set by these 2 books. They split the Lord of the Rings into 2 books. See as the box falls behind. The Fellowship of the Ring sets out, and the Fellowship of the Ring goes south. And basically, I watched the first Lord of the Rings movie and was like, well, that was amazing, but where's the rest? And it was like, okay, well, you can expect the rest when the next film comes out. So for Christmas that year, I said, can I have the whole of The Lord of the Rings? Because I want to read all of it. Now, I wasn't that old at the time, but my parents did buy me it. And I can happily say that when I went into reading Lord of the Rings, I was still quite a young age, and I read the whole of Lord of the Rings at that young age. Went through these two too. Obviously, next. Well, we'll go more into the Lord of the Rings and what I think of it in a moment. But yes, I went through this book, then ploughed through this book, then ploughed through this book, then even read up on some of the appendix stuff. But basically, I'd gone from being someone who didn't read that much to someone who read a hell of a lot. And I used to remember I was on bunk beds at the time with my brother. My brother was on the bottom bunk and I was on the top bunk. And I used to creep out of the top bunk, wake up my brother on the way down, which used to piss him off. I used to sit by our door. Now, at that time in our lives, I did not like the idea of sleeping with the light off, which I'm sure is going to get me a lot of stick. But yeah, I was a bit of a coward, and I did not like sleeping with the light off. It was just that idea of darkness didn't thrill me, let's say. So we had the light off in the main room, and then we had the hallway light on, and the light would come in for a gap in the hallway. A gap in the hallway, the gap in the door that was left. And I used to sit with this tiny ray of light. Well, I say tiny ray of light. I used to sit on the edge of the ray of light because I didn't want one of the parents to walk past, see that I was out of bed. So I used to sit reading. I would be in the dark bit. The book would be in the light bit. I would read line after line and go through. And yeah, that's basically how I learnt to read in a very sort of more adult way. I remember going and getting one of these tests they do in primary school, and I completed the reading test. And when I say I completed the reading test, is the reading test wasn't made to be completed. It was a case of the teacher lists off one word and says, do you know what that means? And you go, yeah, it means that. And then you list off another word, and the teacher goes, do you know what that means? And you go, yeah, it means that. And progressively the words get harder and longer and more challenging, and might be words you hadn't heard before. But I was at that point when I took that exam, I had just finished reading Lord of the Rings. So they're telling me more and more long words, and I'm going, yeah, that means that. Yeah, that means that. Yeah, that means that. That means that. I mean, I had a lot of help on that front in the way that I, not only Lord of the Rings, but my parents are avid listeners to Radio 4. So from quite an early age, I would be listening to that as well. So there's lots of things that influence that. But I was told I had the reading age of an 18-year-old. And when you're in year 5 at school, and for those of you in England, you'll know what I'm talking about there. I think the age is sort of 9, 10-ish, maybe? 9, 10, I think. I could be wrong. And you're told you have a reading age of 18, you feel quite happy with that. Anyway, ploughing on. We are going to jump a massive cross-section of my life and go on to this. This is a Neuromancer. The Neuromancer I read, Neuromancer by William Gibson, I read basically because of my brother. He was doing creative writing course at university, and he said, oh, this is a really good book, you should read it. And I thought, really? At that time in my life, I was watching a lot more TV than I was reading books. I was ploughing my way through Buffy the Vampire Slayer and shows that I never had watched as a kid, because As I was growing up in my household, my family didn't own a television. Well, that's not entirely true. We had the box. We didn't have the aerial or the satellite or any way of connecting to the actual television. So we had the VHS player and we had the box to watch the VHSs on. And that was it. And that's what we lived with. And, to be honest, didn't have a bad childhood. I rather enjoyed it. My granddad had occasionally taped things off the TV and sent them to us, and we'd watch those. So I did get the Muppet Show and the Sesame Street and things like that. But for the most part, it was watching VHSs that would normally be a sort of film night that me and my family used to do, where we'd sit down on a Friday evening and Dad would get out Zulu or The Italian Job or one of those types of films, and me and my brother would sit with him and watch that. Okay. Anyway, back to the Neuromancer, which I'm holding in my hands here. Neuromancer basically was a massive trip for me into a world that I had not envisioned. This world where the joys of technology and sort of all the really good sci-fi stuff hadn't happened yet. Your Star Wars isn't in the Neuromancer. However, your hacker, your sort of grim, dark mercenary, those types of people are there. And they're amazing. And they're, in my eyes, slightly more interesting. I'm not saying Star Wars isn't interesting, by the way, people. I'm not saying it can't be dark or cruel. Okay, bad. Basically, what I'm saying is I fell in love with cyberpunk. When I read this book, I fell in love with cyberpunk. Which brought me to quickly buy the next books from that series. I have a worrying feeling I've got them in all... No, these aren't the correct order. Count Zero and then Mona Lisa Overdrive. And they are brilliant books. If you haven't read any William Gibson stuff, I would... If you haven't read any William Gibson stuff, these are amazing. If you haven't read any cyberpunk stuff, these 3 books are a brilliant introduction to cyberpunk. Really are. I've followed that up by reading Burning Chrome as well. I want to call it Burning Chrome. I might be wrong with the name there. So please correct me in the comments if I need correcting. But yes, very enjoyable books. If you want to jump into cyberpunk, I massively suggest these. I'm sure there are more. There are some other excellent cyberpunk novels from what I hear. But these showed me a sort of cyberpunk that I was really interested in. And to be honest, I prefer this kind of cyberpunk to the ones that have more of the fantasy elements. I'm less into some of the sort of the magic along with the computing. That said, a friend of mine says I'm going to really enjoy reading the Shadowrun novels, so I hold my reserve comment on most of that because I really like the Shadowrun game. The more recent one, I want to say. Okay, moving swiftly on. Going back in time, actually, with this one. So we got Douglas Adams here, and if you're watching my channel and don't know who Douglas Adams is, he's the guy who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you don't know what Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is, then I think I've done all I can for you. Anyway, I saw these at one of my sister's school bazaars when she was, when she was in primary school, I think, yeah. So I was in secondary school by this point, and I saw this, and it was being sold for some ridiculously cheap price, and I was like, yep, I'm having it. The artwork looks fantastic. Can I say that I've actually read it? Well, I started. I went, I took the books out, I started reading the books. The problem with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you're going to read the book, if you're going to sit down and read the book, if you know it as well as I already did, there are actually some slight differences with the book. because I enjoyed the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was the radio play. And the radio play is fantastic. I can quote lines from the radio play. I can talk about how a pan-galactic gargle blaster is like being hit round your head with a slice of lemon wrapped around a gold brick. And yes, it has been quite a while, so maybe I'm not so great at doing them now. But base to say is when I was reading these, I was like, that's not what it says in the radio play. And then you're thinking, well, that doesn't matter. It's a book, it's a different form. And yes, it is. Problem was, at that point in time, there were whole hours worth of that radio play that I could almost quote word for word. I can't say I can anymore, now I've just put myself to the challenge, but it became one of those points where I was like, okay, well, you know what, actually, I'll just turn on my tape of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'll listen to my tape of Hitchhiker's Guide whilst lying in bed on something, and basically talk along with it. So yeah, there's my love for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. These books look lovely. That's why they're still here. If they didn't, they wouldn't be. If you look at the front covers on these, it's just really quite fun. You've got tea there. Dried leaves in boiled water. I wonder if that is the representation of what someone thinks a pan-galactic gargle blaster might look like. One wonders. But yes, they're all very, very nice. It's just fun. It's fun, very fun. The restaurant at the end of the universe and all the rest. So that was a very enjoyable part of my life, I guess. Came to Hitchhiker's Guide, loved Hitchhiker's Guide, and would not have liked to ever have been brought out without it. It was one of the enjoyable events of my childhood, listening to Radio 4 and listening about Marvin the manically depressed android's pain in all the diodes down his left side. So yeah, there we go. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay, for the moment none of you have been waiting for, but I have been. We are now going to tackle Naruto. Now, Naruto is an amazing anime. I really enjoy it. I know there are people out there who don't. Right now, could not care less. However, it pains me to say that the anime at current has stopped garnering any of my interest, as I have now finished off reading the manga. And you know, when I say finished off reading the manga, yes, it's over. It's been over quite a while. Would the anime please catch up, and can we stop with all the filler episodes? For those of you who know much about Naruto, you'll quite quickly realise that the seasons of Naruto Unleashed I have in front of me here cover the entire time that Naruto is following the manga. And then they stop at number 6. And then I get Naruto Shippuden, which follows the manga. I'm afraid with that one I kind of have stopped a little bit because I have other people in my household who own the other bits, and they're quite expensive to get in the UK, and I can't always afford these things. So yeah, I have found some paid streaming services which do allow you to watch them, like Crunchyroll, and yeah, that's been good for me. But yeah, if you haven't tackled Naruto came for me at a point when I was into quite a few animes, had watched quite a few animes, but most of the animes I'd watched were quite dark ones. And Naruto originally showed me something quite lighter and happier, but also showed me a level of character progression that you just don't get in a 24 episode anime. Well, one that only runs for one season, that is. So, yeah, Naruto sort of showed me a level of character progression that was really interesting and I really enjoyed watching. And also sort of there's that level of this is a whole world. This is a whole completely different universe with its own sort of rules governing its societies. It's really interesting. Okay, so there we finish with Naruto. Yeah, okay, some of you have noticed there is something on the end here. Okay, Death Note. Yeah, 37 episodes, they definitely got some progression. This was a nice box. It has this lovely artwork thing in. Death Note artwork thing. Let's get it visualized nicely. There we have a picture of Light Yagami. And some pictures, more Light Yagami. There's L, the original. I love the sort of... I do like the artwork. I like having a book of artwork from a show. I do really like that. I know, you've probably all noticed I'm avoiding talking about Death Note. Okay, so Death Note was one of the earlier animes I watched. It was not the earliest anime I watched. Death Note started off as something I really enjoyed. This black and white, very sort of easy to stomach version of what should happen to people. And then it challenged that, but it didn't challenge that very well. I mean, Light Yagami is not, in the anime at least, I've never read the manga, and I've been told I really should. But Light Yagami, as far as the anime goes, is a bit of a pretentious twat. And yeah, he's not a very likable character. I don't think he's supposed to be. But if you want to keep watching something, you've got to enjoy it. And though I did watch all of Death Note, unlike Naruto, where I go back and rewatch series, unlike many other animes where I go back and rewatch them, and go out of my way to say, hey, mate, you aren't into anime, I know, but would you like to try some? And I'll find an anime which I feel they would like to try. And I like doing that, not just because I'm sharing a good anime, but also because it gives me another chance to sit down and watch the anime and say, oh, I have an excuse to be rewatching something. Which sometimes I need to tell my brain I need an excuse, because it doesn't always like the idea that I'm wasting time doing something I've done before. My head is a bit weird that way. It sort of sees time very importantly as something that I'm always running out of. Getting things done at the time they should be done. I normally leave these things very last minute. This wasn't always the way I was. When I was at school, I was much more well behaved. However, in later life, it has always been a problem. And it's been one where it goes sort of, yeah, okay. Could have done that a bit faster. Anyway, to stop criticizing myself, what I'm trying to say here is Death Note was fun, but it wasn't the most fun I ever had. Talking of the most fun I ever had, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about me. I think I talked through some of that. I think I talked through some of these lovely items. I think I showed you a few things. I will admit, maybe we didn't spend enough time on Naruto, but we will get more chances to. There are more Naruto things around my room, and we will get onto them. I mean, there's definitely more of them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to click the like button. If you dislike the video, the dislike button is there as well. And if you enjoy this kind of content, I will be making more, so feel free to subscribe.